Hello, welcome to Intuitive Insights podcast. I am your no BS woo woo coach, Meghan McDonough, and today I have Juliana Sloan. Hi, Juliana.
Hey, Megan.
Juliana is a hypnotherapist, a transformational coach. She's a Buddhist teacher who works and waves wisdom together with traditions and cutting-edge psychology. Trained in in-depth hypnosis, applied shamanic counseling, positive psychology coaching, and coaching for the unconscious mind. She helps clients move beyond the limits of talk therapy into deeper terrain of the unconscious mind. Through hypnosis, trance work, meditation, and more, Juliana guides people into spaces of awareness where lasting insight and transformation can become possible. Welcome, Juliana. That was hard for me to say.
I gave you a mouthful.
It was a mouthful, but you are an accomplished lady and we need to say those things. So hi, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me, Megan.
Of course, of course. So, all right, let's kick this off with because I have a lot of questions. I've dabbled a bit myself in Buddhism and philosophy. And before we talked, we had a nice conversation that explored religion and spirituality and the mind in general. So, I'd like to explore that too. But first, what does the word intuition mean to you?
You know, when I think of intuition, and even as you ask that, one of the first things that came up for me was just this sense of like learning to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
And to allow the channel of creativity, of wisdom, of knowing to be something within us that we can trust. So much of all of the inner work that I do with people is, if I were to really sense into it, at the heart of it, there is this question of, how do we get out of our own way? How do we let the real truth of our being and of our knowing actually be something we have a relationship with?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you said creativity as well, because and correct me if you feel differently, but I feel like creativity is an absolute expression of our intuition.
100%. One of the things that actually happens a lot in my work with clients, because, we're doing this deep trance work. It often can feel very visionary, very archetypal. There are metaphors. There's a lot that can be popping.
Yeah.
And so much of the time, especially early in the work, people will say, well, how do I know that I'm not making it up?
Right.
And, the big thing that I always say is your imagination, your creativity. It's a doorway into deep presence and deep knowing.
Mhm.
And, I think in some ways we've been conditioned that imagination, creativity, playfulness when it comes to intuitive knowing is, not real deal serious, but that's a doorway that'll get us there.
Yeah, curiosity and play for sure. I was going to ask you something. Oh, you just said something and I lost it. Oh, okay. Well, let's just move on then to my next question, which is this is the beauty of perimenopause, all the beautiful questions.
Oh, I'm right there with you.
We're right out the door. And like I said before, I would just make it up. And now I'm just like, no, it's gone. I'm moving on. Okay. So how and when, like, what was the kind of inciting incident for you that made you start utilizing your intuition more in your life? Or was there one?
This is a great question. And, I'm not sure if there is one specific moment that I can point to that it was like, oh, okay, the intuition, this is the thing to listen to.
Yeah.
One piece of advice that I got from, one of my teachers when I was a teenager, here I was, adolescent kid, super sensitive, super, super sensitive, and kept on repeating patterns in my relationships that
Mhm.
kept on leaving me heartbroken as one does.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember one of my teachers, I was so, so sad. And she was this very wise, intuitive woman. And she looked at me and she was like, the thing is, when it comes to all of these different pieces, first your intuition, it's going to tap you on the shoulder real
Mhm.
gently.
Mhm.
And then the universe is gonna maybe smack you upside the head a little bit if you don't listen to it. And then if you don't listen to that, the piano's gonna drop from the window. So you wanna start getting good at listening to the little nudges and the little whispers and those little moments where there's a part of you that already knows this is the wrong person, or this is the wrong choice, or this is the right person, and this is the right choice. And that's something that it's really stayed with me over time of, may I develop my knowing and my ability to listen in such a way and support other people to do the same, that we don't have to have quite so many pianos dropped on our heads.
Right. I like that the way you said that, "May I." It's a beautiful way to say that, "May I develop." Um, so did you start with kind of the psychological, or was it more of the spiritual, or was it how did the bridge come together?
That's a great question. The spiritual for me came first. And
Mhm.
by first, I mean way, way, way first. One of my early memories that I had kind of pushed under the rug and forgotten about until going to silent meditation retreats later in
Vipassana, yeah.
life.
Mhm.
Um, I remember being a young kid. I want to guess maybe 6 or 7 years old, like little,
Yeah,
little.
yeah.
And I was an only child. So I spent a lot of time alone. I was very imaginative. Of course, one of the gifts of perimenopause is discovering, oh, I've just been super ADHD this whole
Right.
time. But yeah, I was
Good.
that dreamy,
Yeah.
dreamy
Mhm.
kid. And I remember sitting in my room and closing my eyes and beginning to get very still and concentrated and watching the interplay of, light and color in the visual screen behind the eyes with the
Yeah,
eyes
yeah.
closed. And all of a sudden, it was like this deep experience of seeing the ways that thoughts bubbled up,
Mhm.
the way that the thoughts weren't even really mine, the way that, you could cling on to a thought and make it
Yeah,
bigger and stronger, or you could let it slip away.
yeah.
And I remember running down the stairs to my mother and saying, I just discovered where thoughts come from. I was
Yeah.
so thrilled. And, of course, she's a busy
Yeah.
mom. She was in the middle of something.
Like,
She
yeah,
did
yeah,
not
yeah.
understand that I had just had this very deep meditative experience.
Right, right.
And, to be honest, there's always been a sense of there must be more. There must be more magic. There must be more of the sacred. There must be
Mhm.
more going on than meets the eye. And,
Yeah,
I would say over and over and over, I feel like I've been proven right. There is so much more going on
yeah.
than the things we can touch and taste and see and smell. And so that really is what got me started on this path. And then, of course, over time, life happens and personal traumas and events unfold. And I began to become very interested also in the psychological aspect, particularly how do we heal trauma? How do we heal attachment wounding?
Mhm.
How do we heal these places where our own sense of personal power and worthiness and well-being are compromised.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you there. On the senses, I know in yoga, the 5 senses are the way that we draw ourselves or draw our mind out of focus. There are ways that our mind can get pulled off focus and connect to the maya, the illusion that this tangible world is the real thing. So is there kind of a similar thought or idea in Buddhism?
Yeah, some definitely layers that are related here.
Yeah,
When we
yeah.
talk about the sense doors, we include the mind actually as one of the sense doors. So
Yeah,
it's, seeing,
imagination.
smelling,
Yeah.
touching, tasting,
Mhm,
feeling,
mhm,
thinking.
mhm.
And part of one of the biggest teachings there is this idea that part of our job is to find a way to kind of guard and protect all of these sense doors,
Mm,
knowing that,
makes sense.
when we watch a violent or dark movie, it impacts us.
Yeah, it does.
When we hear somebody speaking really angrily or really hatefully, it impacts
It
us.
affects us, the energy affects you, yeah.
When we subsist on a diet entirely made of sugar and caffeine, it impacts our
It
experience
does.
of the world. So part of the instructions really are um, what's happening in the senses are more important than we might write them off to be on our regular
Right.
day to day. Yeah.
So the perspective is less like, don't pay attention to them, but pay attention to them because they're giving you the guardrails of what's going on.
Yeah, I would say pay attention, but don't get sucked in, right? Can we have a witnessing of what's happening, but not fall over into like, ooh, I'm gonna let this
Right,
really grab me and take me on a
right,
ride.
right.
Mhm.
Indulge, no
Yeah.
indulgences. My tea bags fell, like, I don't know why, but it drives I have my tea bags in. Sorry, this is, like, so off the anyway. Okay, and then the next question I had was, around, so your curiosity came around you followed your curiosity, which is, again, an intuitive thing, I believe, but, to how do we heal as, like, the root of your curiosity? Is what I heard, and so my question with that is what have you found in that, what crosses over and what doesn't between the psychological and the spiritual?
It's a great question. And, I would say almost everything crosses over, right?
Yeah, yeah,
In my view at least, and this is partly like, yes, I am a healing practitioner and a spiritual counselor. So
right,
from my lens, there's almost nothing
yeah,
that can't be included in the realm of spirit and the realm of magic and the realm of what's um, wrapped up in our intuitive knowing.
yeah,
It's all consequential. When I think about, these overlaps between healing and psychology,
yes,
and spirit and psychology, I think one of the things that I find to be so supportive actually in, some of these healing modalities that are a little bit more spiritually and intuitively oriented is it's much less pathologizing. We don't have to worry about, oh, is there something wrong with me? Oh, what's my diagnosis?
yeah,
What we're
yeah,
doing is we're really getting super curious and real about what's underneath the surface. If I go down a few layers into my feeling of unworthiness or my anxiety getting on an airplane or my relationship with my parent,
mhm,
what's underneath the surface? And so
mhm,
often, when we start to go underneath the surface and get really curious, we start to see that an entire world opens up of
mhm,
experience, of knowing, of places where maybe energy is blocked or where there's been a long held misunderstanding. And, part of the reason that the work that I do is bringing people specifically into altered states of consciousness to
mhm.
do deep healing work is because there are limits to how much talking about it can help. And I would say, in many ways, that is a huge guiding star for me. I'm someone who personally benefited greatly from therapy and also reached a point where it was like, there's got to be something more. There's got to be a way to do things a little more deeply. There's got to be something else going on beneath the surface because I could talk about it. I could intellectualize
But
it.
it's
It
not
was
it
still
comes back.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
coming
so,
back.
my goal really for my work with others is that they get to go deeper. They get to go beneath the surface and get more understanding of what's really going on and find the ways through their own inner wisdom and experience and innate creativity to heal in really profound ways.
Yeah, I keep hearing this, like, the term ball root, you know what that is? I think I've used it before, but it's, like, when you're pulling out weeds, and the only way you can really make sure that that doesn't come back is if you get to the ball root, but the ball root doesn't, it's buried in the energetic body. It's buried in the intuitive, psychic body,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So usually we're going deep into the
Yeah,
body, into the energy, into the long held beliefs, and we're saying, yeah, where is that tangle
yeah,
there at the root that
I
needs
like that
to once
tangle.
and for all be untangled?
Yes. Yes, yes. Oh, 2 things on that. So 1, I wrote down this quote, and I'm sure I'm messing it up, but it's Einstein's quote of "Logic will get you so far, but imagination will get you everywhere." And I was thinking of that while you were explaining and exploring the healing. Um, and the tangle. So, in my experience, and I'm wondering if you feel and sense the same. When I was around my yoga teacher, physically present with her, um, which was only for a short period of time, even though I've like she's like the well from which I drink, right? And um, but when I'm in her presence, I feel all the tangles in my mind. Not, you know, I'm not judging myself or whatever. It's just like, oh, she has no knots. Like the reflection of or minimal. The minimal knots or tangles in her mind reflects to me the tangles and knots in my own. And I find that when I'm in the presence of someone who is truly kind of rooted and grounded and has made a major effort to untangle the knots of the mind, that it provides a beautiful mirror, for my own tangled.
It's a beautiful reflection, and I resonate with what you're sharing, in that, yeah, when we are with people who are grounded and
Mm.
healed and have done profound inner work,
Mhm.
you can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel like, oh, there's not as much friction. There's n- this the slate is maybe a little cleaner. There's
Mhm.
not as much of that entanglement or,
Yeah.
clutter that's sort of happening there. And I think it can be such a powerful motivator to, wow,
Yeah,
like,
inspire.
can I be the kind of person who someone else feels that lack of friction in my presence? You
Yes.
know, what an
Yes.
aspiration.
Yeah, I was thinking vibration. I don't have it here with me, but the Tibetan singing bowls, I usually have them right behind me, but, like, sometimes I'll bring them when I teach yoga, and I'll play them on like, for the little kids, I'll play them on the belly, and then I was like, "You know what? Adults like that too," so I started bringing them for that in Shavasana, but if it's not positioned right, if it doesn't have the space to vibrate, it won't vibrate when you play it. And when you were sharing that, I was starting to get this visual of like, oh, it's when someone can vibrate their natural frequency freely. That's what becomes loud, clear, and inspiring. You know.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Um. So I have a question I want to ask you. Well, first of all, were you brought up Buddhist? Is that something you found on your own?
I was not,
Yeah.
I come from a family of recovered Catholics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lot of family jokes that I didn't entirely understand because pretty much everybody was like, "Yeah, we're not gonna raise our kids connected to a church," because I think they had had some, yeah, pretty challenging experiences in
You make a
that.
fair point
Mhm.
because I feel like being raised Catholic, though, did help out my comedy. And I'm started wondering if
My
I'm getting
family is very funny. I joke that I studied religion in college just so I could understand their jokes at Thanksgiving.
right,
You know? I
right,
mean,
right.
funniest people on earth. I mean, really such a there is such a thread of humor that is so so real within that, and I really love it and cherish it.
Well, it gives you that
Um
perspective
mhm.
of, like it really crystallizes the perspective of action and word being in, um, hypocrisy. Not always, but some, and then and that you're forced to do things that, like, don't make it to have no resonance, but everybody, like, hive mind goes along with it like no big deal. And so it's like it gives you this perspective of, like, are we why are we pretending emperors have clothes right now? Like, we're not connecting, you know? Anyway, that's my
Oh boy, yeah. It's I mean, I hear what you're saying, and it's just making me also reflect on how many pieces of our culture are
yes,
wrapped up in that exact same experience right now. I mean, the power of confusion and delusion is real strong right now. But
yeah.
to
No, but I feel like, and yes, it is, and there are several reasons for that, but like metaphysical and legit, but so to that, um, unpacking uh the ball root in the spiritual psychic realm, right? Psychic realm meaning like intuitive space, um, which we are not trained to do. Matter of fact, we're trained to know to trust your gut, but usually that trusting the gut is instinct, which houses a little bit of fear because you're trying to protect this, a finite body and, skin suit. You know what I mean? So, like, intuition doesn't have fear because it is infinite, but the but instinct um, is the body listening to the intuition, but in order to protect the body, right? That's my understanding of this, my interpretation of it. So, what people are confusing in my perspective, and I want to hear what you think about this, um, instinct and intuition, A, but B, because the ego is wrapped up in the physical, in the finite, right? In the fear based, the place to protect. Um, so there's a confusion over instinct versus intuition, and not having the discernment between what's fear and what's faith. What's trust and what's fear, and then the other one that because I felt it, it means it's true, and that main thing I feel is the underbelly of all the confusion that's happening right in the earth right now because and not being able to discern if that feeling is trust or fear.
You know, it's interesting as you're naming this and kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
bringing up this theme. The thing that just keeps on coming up for me, and maybe it's because also we were talking about family of origin,
Yeah.
is when I'm working with a client and it becomes very clear that there is an ancestral element to what they're working with, that, maybe they're stuck in the same pattern and they feel like I just can't release the fear or the attachment or the sense of being, you know, responsible for carrying the burden of all of the people that I love and that I know. And, I think this is also one of those places where our real deep trust and knowing of what's possible in terms of our own freedom and well being and the habituated lineage line, egoic pieces get a little bit tangled up because so much of the time, you know, I will be working with someone and they'll hit upon some big, big piece
Mm,
of lineage line work.
mm,
And often there is resistance at first to doing their own healing around it because there's a sense that if I do my healing around this, then I will be stepping out of the
Right?
family and I won't
Yeah.
belong anymore. I'll be stepping out of that connection.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the time when things like this come up, part of our task is not just to understand our own tangle, but
Mhm.
to understand the way that our tangle is interconnected with other people's tangles. And that if
Mm.
we carry the burden for someone else, or protect them from their own pain, or try and caretake them so that they don't have to deal with X, Y, or Z,
Yeah.
that we're actually denying them the opportunity for their own healing and their own path. And
Yeah.
by doing our own healing and letting go of the things that we don't need to carry,
Mhm.
that we're actually opening the door for more freedom, for ourselves, but also for a greater collective.
Yeah, I feel that strongly, that last part you said. It's I feel it cerebrally, and I'm trying to implement it more, behaviorally. But the fact that, like, as a parent, you know, we're not here to stop them from pain or in well, yes, I mean, for to a certain, like, don't just be like, "Hey, go see what it feels like to run in front of a car." No, that's not what we're that's not what I mean. You know, is it painful? Cool. Good job. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean more like, well, I'm coming from the space where I do believe that we come into this world with, uh, in the Kabbalah, they call it tikkun, corrections, or samskara in yoga, like, things that need to be healed, right? And so when when we protect the our children, overly protect them, we do need to protect them, but overly protect them, we are obstructing their life's journey, and we're taking the responsibility out of their hands, and not empowering them to heal, to become wise, to discern, to grow, you know? It's a hard one.
Absolutely. It is. I mean, I think it comes down to this piece of, in so many spiritual traditions, we're told that letting go is so important. And then we come face to face with how hard it actually is to let go. Whether it's letting go of wanting to protect our children from every possible
Mhm.
difficulty and harm they could encounter, or, I work with a lot of adults who were parentified as children and feel like it's their responsibility to be the person who's managing the emotions of everybody else in their family.
Yeah.
And, the path of learning to let go and learning to sense into more deeply what is my personal responsibility and what is actually the job and the journey and the responsibility of someone else. Like that's a lifetime work.
Yeah, it is. Um, you know, you're saying that, and I wrote this down, speaking of my teacher, on something next to me on my desk, and I might screw this up, so if anyone is, very versed in Sanskrit, I pre-apologize for this, but Naham karta harihi karta, which she told me translates to I am not the doer, the universe is the doer. And I was like, I'm gonna write that down because there are so many times, there are positive and there's so this is another thing. And I feel like this is similar. This philosophy translates to Buddhism, which is there really is no good and bad. There just is information. And the information, like placing good and bad on something, um, there's connection, there's truth, there's love, there's inner knowing, unobstructed inner knowing, and then there is attachment to the finite. There is, overprotection of the skin suit, that has many manifested forms. So there really is no good or bad, there just is. And what is the information you're receiving, right? Is it bringing me closer to connection? Is it taking me further away? Is it taking me closer to love? Is it taking me further away from fear? Towards fear? Um, so it's very hard. So what I was about to say was the ego. So the ego, everyone's like, I know it becomes like, you don't want an ego, but you need one to get dressed and brush your teeth and, show up and get a job. Like you need an semblance of an ego because that is part of the thing that drives the train of the physical body, right? But to remember that the ego is not in charge is the hard part. Meaning, because the ego wants to drive the train, but the ego is literally like, I don't know, like a passenger, maybe the janitor on the train, like he's not really like, he doesn't have the map, the intuition, the universe, the seer that we all have connection to has the map.
Yeah. I think in a lot of the time, it boils down to what's our intention.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there an intention towards kindness and dignity and liberation and
Hmm.
respect and, generosity, or is there an intention, um,
For harm.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
tangled up or
Hmm.
confused or aversive, or whatever it is. And I think in so many ways, what we really are here to be doing is like, can we be a steward of our positive intention and find ways to let that be more accessible in our day-to-day lived reality?
So, having said that, what are do you have some like tools that you offer that are just like simple that people can drop in, to just help with this, alignment of self and reorganization towards more fulfilled healing?
Great question. It's funny. A lot of people lately have been asking me, "Yeah, well, what's the simple tool that somebody can do in 5 minutes?" And
Maybe there isn't. Yeah.
well, I would say, from where I stand and from the work that I do, the answer is kind of a yes and.
Mm,
Yes, there are simple tools, but they
yes.
also take time to learn.
Yes.
So some of those simple tools, like I I support clients in learning to do shamanic journey work. And it is such a powerful modality for inquiry and for
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
And it absolutely can be a 10-minute practice in your living room once you know how to do it. And it can be an absolute game changer. Same goes with some of the hypnotherapeutic techniques I use. There are
Yeah.
some different things that, can take somebody from a, 10 level of being super triggered and
Mm,
dial it down to a 2 or a 3 pretty quick, pretty
yeah.
darn quick. And so I would say, yes, absolutely. There are some incredible tools that we have at our disposal, but it also takes more time to really properly learn them. Yeah. What I
Yeah.
would invite people into is, learning to do shamanic journey work or learning
Mm,
some of the simple hypnosis techniques or learning from a good teacher how to meditate,
yes.
because it's definitely helpful for all of this to get really good instruction and support.
You just helped me rephrase that question, and I am now phrasing it. What's a good invitational tool? Because you're right, you have to continue to practice, but what's the tool that you can start with to kind of get your taste buds, you know, savory for the next, or savory, is that the right word? You know what I'm saying? Salivating for the next thing. And, what is specifically, I mean, I've done some shamanic training, but how would you, uh, explain the shamanic journey work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I work with people, and there are other people who do things differently.
Mhm.
So I can speak for this sort of applied shamanic counseling model,
Yeah.
is what we do is we are using the shamanic journey as a tool for healing and inquiry. And so what a journey looks like is, you're using a repetitive drum beat. Some cultures it's chanting, some cultures it's something like the didgeridoo in Australia, but
Mhm.
many cultures it's a repetitive rhythmic drum.
Mm.
And the fascinating thing about this is that that rhythmic beat actually entrains the mind to go into a trance-like state.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
it is something that is, which I think is part of too why, um, electronic dance music is so popular. That driving beat actually is doing something in your brain. So if you're feeling euphoric, if you're feeling like it's possible to let go more deeply with a certain type of music with a driving beat, part of that is actually because there's something happening in your brain.
Yeah.
In the shamanic journey, what we're really doing is we're taking that drum beat and we are journeying with an understanding of the shamanic cosmology. We are journeying to connect with a guide.
Mm.
And this can be thought of as a teacher, an ally, a
Mm.
supporter that may come in many different forms, but ultimately is kind of an archetypal representation of wisdom,
Mm.
of power, of goodness, of support. And we are journeying to that guide in a trance state to ask for healing, for information, for assistance, for clarity. And so many things can, of course, happen in the journey. We don't know heading in
Mhm.
what is going to take place. But even in that, part of the reason that I really love working with people in altered states is we don't know what's going to happen. We are going into the unknown. And one of the knock on benefits of that is that in all parts of our life,
Mhm.
we become more comfortable and more able to go into unknown situations.
Mhm.
We become more able to take risks. We become more able to trust our gut or our intuition. We become more able to find ourselves in new circumstances and adapt. So it really,
So it makes you
yeah,
more resilient.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking of the nature of resiliency is like fluid, and when I think of, intuition and spirit, I really don't like that word, but you know what I mean? But, like, that it's fluid, it's playful, it's curious, it's light, whereas the physical world is more dense, linear, angular, direct. Mass the Shakti versus, Shiva energy, um, and then we pull it all together to make who we are, right? Is there a specialty of, like, do you specialize in a particular issue for healing, or are all these modalities meant to serve kind of a breadth of, let's say, imbalances?
Great question. I tend to work with a broad range of people, but there are always similar themes that come up. All
Sure.
of these modalities can support people through all kinds of things.
Mhm.
But I would say, sort of, the top places where I tend to be working with people are around anxiety,
Mm.
stress, fear, phobia, that sort of tangle,
Yeah.
as well as a lot of people who keep on repeating the same pattern in their relationships
Mm, mhm.
and want to stop having the anxious attachment and pick different partners, want to stop finding themselves abandoning themselves once they get into relationship,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also work with a lot of people who are navigating chronic illness on top of it all. This can be
Mm,
really, really supportive as a complementary tool
yeah.
when you're navigating all kinds of physical healing and medical infrastructure, and also needing something that provides a little bit deeper energetic and spiritual support along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are physical and energetic beings, so it makes absolute sense that, when seeking healing, you don't stop at the physical. That you get a 360 of the soul, mind and body. So, how can people find you?
They can find me on my website.
Yeah.
It's julianasloane.com. That's JulianaSloane. I always spell it because, amazingly enough, everybody spells it wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't realize growing up I had a hard to spell name, but apparently I do. And there's a famous singer who has the same name
Oh,
now,
does she
so
really?
yeah, apparently you have to be a little more more
Oh my god, that's
careful.
funny.
Otherwise, you're signing up for voice lessons.
Oh my god.
Um,
Similar but different,
a bit different. But if people hop onto my website, you'll see there's a link to have a 30-minute consultation call to see if working together feels right.
Yeah.
I also teach meditation groups, classes, retreats, both online and in the Southwest United States. So I'm around and teaching quite a lot if somebody wants a little bit of an easier entry point also into
Yeah.
some of this work.
Wonderful. I'll make sure I'll put all that in the show notes for you.
Thanks so much.
I so enjoyed speaking with you today. I
This was
l
a real treat,
I
Megan.
love your energy, and I love the work that you're doing. I You said something at the beginning about when and I've found this to be true personally and then with people that I've worked with, but when I'll call it your soul, put in whatever word you wish, but when your soul is the one extracting the lesson, not someone else telling you or pathologizing you, what have you, it just resonates deeper and it shifts more profoundly. And the healing is more like, it's more instant. It's the ball route. It's getting to the ball route. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. This was a real lovely way to spend part of the afternoon. I'm so
Yes.
glad that we got to do this.
Me too. Me too. All right. Have a great day. Thank you all for watching or listening if you're listening. And you can find all of Juliana's information in the show notes. See you soon.